Hello everyone. I have a different filming location today because I'm trying to watch the kids while they play. But that does mean that I have this nice like weird lighting going on because of the way the sun is coming down and shining right in. But at least it's not like shining right in my eyes, so that's fine. I have a lot of books to talk about. This is my mid-month wrap-up, and since it's middle grade March, I have read a lot of books. I don't even know how many have I read, like 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 books is quite a lot to talk about, but 9 of those I did in more detail in a vlog. I did a vlog where I read all books that were either set in Asia or had an Asian main character, and I talked about all these books in detail in that vlog, so I'm just gonna run through those books really quick. So there's actually only like 4 that I haven't discussed already in that vlog. I'll link that down below in case you want more details on those 9 books. But let's start with the ones I haven't talked about in a vlog. And first I have the only adult book that I've read so far, and that is The Night Shift by Alex Finley. With this lighting, I'm gonna have to make sure I don't blind you with these library books. But how about I have showed it to you, I'm gonna put it down now. All right, so The Night Shift is a thriller, and I got it because last year I liked Alex Finley's debut thriller, and I saw he came out with a new thriller this year, so I, had reserved it from the library, and it just came in. And I was just in the mood for something that I could read real quick. His books do just read really fast. I read it in like 2 sittings, basically, when I was on vacation. The other reason I really was interested in this one is because it says in the blurb, the beginning of the blurb is, it's New Year's Eve, 1999. Y2K is expected to bring chaos. They're at a Blockbuster Video in New Jersey when 4 teenagers working late in the store are attacked. Well, that's the part of the blurb I read because I don't usually read the entire blurb for a thriller. And I was like, awesome, a book set in 99. That was when I graduated from high school. It'll feel very nostalgic and all that. But I should have read the rest of the blurb because though it begins in the prologue in 1999, once we move to like chapter 1, it's 15 years later. So it really is not set at Y2K. Just that is like when these murders happen, and then 15 years later, a similar case like mass murder at like a retail type place happens with teenagers, and so they're wondering if the 2 cases are connected. And not that I wouldn't have read it, but I might not have like been so excited to read it if I hadn't thought that it was going to be nostalgic, but I still really enjoyed it. I think his books are very fast-paced and fun. I wouldn't say they're the best thrillers. Like, I'm not going to remember this thriller in like a month, but I enjoyed myself while I was reading. It was like super quick, fast read for me. Like I said, 2 sittings and I was done. His chapters are super short, which I love. Like, they're like a couple page chapters. And then he also does like different perspectives. So this one had 3 perspectives. It was like from the FBI agent and from a survivor of the first murder. And is there a third one? I can't remember if there's a third. I don't know if it's like the current. Oh, and then the brother of the person that was accused of the first murder. So yes, there are 3 different perspectives. And I think it just like moved really quick because you're learning different things from all those perspectives. So I would recommend it if you're just looking for something fun, popcorn kind of, that you're gonna forget about a moment later. It's not gonna fill you up, but it was entertaining. And I will read other things from Alex Finley, but I don't think it was like anything monumental. Like, it wasn't anything new, and it wasn't the nostalgia that I was hoping for. Just a fun, quick paced thriller. And then on to my middle grade books. So the first one that I read at the beginning of the month was A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park. And this was a really short one, so I just finished it right in a couple days at the beginning of the month. And I used this for the prompt of 5 words in the title. And this is a nonfiction book that she's writing based on this man's life and his story. So she interviewed him and talked to him. And so this man, Selva, when he was young, he was a refugee, and I think this is in Sudan. So he had to flee and walked a really long time to safety and all that, looking for his family. And then there's another perspective in here that's just in a little bit, that is a girl living in more modern time, which it's not like modern today, it's in 2008, because I think this book is a little old. So the modern one is 2008, and then Salva's in 1985. And so it's Salva's story of being a refugee, and then this girl in 2008 who has to walk a really long way for water each day. So it's talking about some of the issues that people in the Sudan had faced in these two different time periods, both like war, but then also the lack of resources. And I really like this. I gave it 5 stars. I think it's very informative. I think it's the kind of thing that should be taught in schools. And I think it actually is taught in some schools. I've heard people mention that. And so it's definitely one that I'll keep and share with my kids. So that way, if they don't read it in school, then we would read it together. Because I just think it's good for kids to know about the refugee experience, and also about people that might have different resources in terms of water, that not everybody has water that just comes out of their tap in their home. And the next book I read was The Little Prince by, I forgot to look up how to say his name, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I'm sure I said that wrong because I am not good at French. I read this for the prompt of a book that's older than you, because I think this was written in the 40s, 1943. And this is just kind of a cute little fable. I think I gave it 4 stars. It's definitely one I would share with my kids, because even though it's from the 40s, I think it's still understandable and has like kind of, it's very much like a fable in terms of like it has a moral that it's talking about, and I think it's on the level of something that kids can get from. But it's about this pilot who is stranded in a desert and comes across this little prince that has been traveling around the galaxy to different planets, and he's from a tiny little planet. And yeah, it's a cute story. I would share it with my kids someday. I enjoyed reading it. And the last book that I read outside of that vlog is Book, Uncle and Me by Uma Krishnaswamy. And this one I actually read with my daughter as part of school. This is one of the recommended books that we are reading as part of our curriculum, but it actually works for middle grade March for the prompt of read a book with an Asian main character, or set in Asia, because this is set in India. And this was a great book. I gave this 5 stars because even though I wouldn't necessarily say it's great for adults, like it's very simplistic, so maybe adults wouldn't like it as much as kids, but I think it is a great book to read with your children. My daughter's 7 and she was really invested in the story, and it has some really important messages. It's about this girl who, I think her name is Yasmin, and she goes every day to this man named Book Uncle, who has basically like a free little library. He has like these cartons full of like books that he's just lending out for free. You take a book, you leave a book, you can keep it as long as you want, you bring it back whenever. So he has this little free lending library, but then one day the mayor gives him, notice that he has to start paying a permit if he wants to have this lending library, and Book Uncle can't afford that. And so at the same time, the mayoral election is happening. And so this girl, Yasmin, is like, we should, find out which mayoral candidates are going to support Book Uncle and let him have his free lending library, because it's really important to our community. And so this is all about, political activism, about writing to your representatives. Like she has everybody at school write letters to the different candidates. And I just think it's a really great way for kids to learn about the election process and how you can talk to your representatives and try to make a difference in what's going on in your community. And you can pull the whole community together to tell a mayor that you want something done. And so I really enjoyed reading this to her. She really liked it. I think it's done on a level that a 7-year-old can understand. And I think older than that too, anywhere in that kind of early chapter book to middle grade, middle school type age, if they want to learn more about the election process. And I really enjoy reading it. But like I said, it might not be one that adults would read for pleasure by themselves. But if you have kids, I would suggest reading it with them. So now on to the books that I read for that vlog. Like I said, I'm gonna go through these quick since I talked about them all in detail in the vlog. And almost all of these I gave 4 or 5 stars. I have one that I think I'm gonna lower my rating, so I'm gonna talk about that one first. And that was When You Trap a Tiger by Tay Keller. This won the Newbery last year, and I've been hearing great things about it. It's magical realism that is based off of some Korean folk tales. So it's about a girl who, her and her sister and mother are going to live with their grandmother, and the mother hasn't told them why they're living with their grandmother, just to spend more time with her. And it turns out it's because her grandmother is sick. That is in the synopsis, so that's not a spoiler. And then this tiger that comes out of some of the stories that her grandmother has told her appears to our main character, and she seems to be the only one that can see this tiger, and she's like, what does this mean for me and my grandmother, and what's going on? And at first I gave this 4 stars because I get why this won the Newbery. I think there are some good things in here. I do like the element of storytelling, and I like that it involves Korean culture, and I like the messages of family and like the sister relationship, like her and her sister have kind of a strained relationship because her sister is a teenager now, and kind of like what's that like being kind of the middle schooler with a teenage sister that kind of is like too cool for that. And so there were some good things, and I liked how the main character grows a lot in this book and kind of learns that she can be more than what other people expect from her. I liked all that aspect, but I did not like the way the grandmother's illness was handled, the way the mother didn't tell her kids about it, and so they had to kind of find out in a way that I felt like was really scary for a child instead of being told the truth. And so there was stuff like that I just didn't appreciate. I don't want to go into details about the grandmother's illness because we don't find that out until later, but I just feel like if the mom knows that that's why they're moving there, that they should tell their kids. And so that's why I'm going to lower my rating, because part of when I rate a middle grade book, I think about like not just my enjoyment, but what I want my kids reading this and what messages are they going to get out of the book. And I just don't want them to read that and think like that's how we talk about family issues, that we keep it a secret and we don't share it with kids. And so I was bothered by that. And then now on to the 4-star books. First one is Stargazing by Jen Wang, and this is a graphic novel that's about 2 girls that are Chinese American, and it basically is just talking about how you can be different even though you live in the same community. So they live in the same community of Chinese American kids. So the girl that whose perspective we're following is Christine, and her family is Christian and they speak Chinese at home. Her parents are maybe a little more on the strict side and kind of have certain expectations of her at school and in the community, where Moon moves in next door and they are Buddhist, and she's a little more, free to do more things like listen to K-pop and paint her nails. And so it's just talking about how both of these girls are Chinese American, but there's a wide variety of people out there, that just because you're labeled as one thing does not mean that is your whole personality, that you can be different within that community. And I think it wasn't necessarily like my cup of tea, because I don't usually like that kind of like school contemporary kind of book, but I appreciate that book is out there for kids to read. And then I read Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes by Elena Kaur, and this is an older book that is talking about a real story of a girl named Sadako, who she was a baby when the bomb hit Hiroshima, and then this is taking place when, is she 11 or 12? And she starts to get sick as a result of the bomb. And I think this is a really important story in terms of kids understanding that there are side effects to nuclear weapons, that just because, the bomb was dropped and people died in that event, there were more people that died later on from the radiation and from the effects, and even people that weren't alive. Like, there are people that got sick from the radiation poisoning that was in their parents, So there is effects that happened afterwards. And so I think it's a really important book for kids to read, and I know that sometimes this is taught in schools, so I really appreciate that. But I also would say that I would want to give this to my kid alongside something written by a Japanese author. Like recently I read Soul Lanterns, and this one is translated from Japanese to American. And so I think getting both perspectives and not having, because this is written by, I think the author is Canadian. So I think it would just be important to read this book that was written in the 1970s by a Canadian author with something that is written more modern day from a Japanese author. I think they would go really well together, and I would probably read them someday with my kids when they can handle that topic. Next, I read a picture book, Sea Prayer by Khaled Hosseini, and this one was about a refugee experience, and it's really short. Like I said, it's a picture book. It's in kind of like a watercolor kind of look, and this is another one that I would read with my kids to discuss the refugee experience. So if you have kids that are ready to have that conversation, then I would highly recommend this one, because it is beautifully written and kind of just lays out what a parent would want for their children. They obviously don't want them to have grown up in this war-torn country. They want them to see the beauty of the country they came from. And so I think it is an important book to share with kids. So while I appreciated all of those books so far that I had read in that vlog, these next ones are ones that I just like really personally enjoyed myself. So even beyond their importance and like for middle school kids, these next ones I just found to be entertaining stories for me. Next is A Single Shard by Linda Sue Park, and I just really liked her writing in this one. This is about a boy in Korea back in, I think it's the 12th century, and he is an orphan and he's living under a bridge with another homeless man. So our main character spends most of his time looking through rubbish bins for food or foraging for food, but then the other thing he really likes to do when he has time is to watch one of the local potters making his clay pots. This book goes into a lot of detail about the process of making pottery. It starts from like, you know, pulling the clay out of the ground and draining it, and how they use the different glazes and firing it in the kiln and throwing it on the wheel, all of the different steps. And I really like that. I know there'll probably be some people that would find that boring, but I really liked learning about, you know, a craft, and I really enjoyed the writing of that one. I thought that the ending was a little rushed, which is why I gave it 4 stars and not 5. Next, I have Lailani of the Distant Sea by Erin and Trada Kelly. And this is a fantasy book that's based off of Filipino folklore. And it's about a girl named Lailani who, her village is having some problems because there's been a drought. And so the plants aren't growing. They're having a lack of food, a lack of medicine, things that would come from the ground, like from plants and herbs and all that. And so she makes a wish, has an opportunity to make a wish that she thinks will help her community, but like often when wishes are involved, it backfires, and so she has to go on this quest in order to save her community. And I really love this. I loved the character of Lailani. I liked the made-up world, because it is a made-up world even though it's based off the mythology. And then there were these sections, like it was normally like regular text, but then every once in a while they would have these 2-page sections that were like folk tales, basically, about the different magical or mythical beings that are in this. So it would talk about one specific mythical being that came up, and I really liked those. Those were a lot of fun. So I liked the kind of mix of myth with a fantasy book. Next, we have Arusha on the End of Time by Roshni Chakti. This is the first book in the Pandava series. I think there's gonna be 5 books. And we were reading, my daughter and I, the 7-year-old, and I were reading this as part of school when we were studying ancient India and Hindu mythology, because this is a fantasy book based on Hindu mythology. And I love this. This was so much fun for us to read together. So much so that we've already started the 2nd book. And that's not even part of school. We're just reading it at bedtime just for fun because we're loving it so much. This is about Arusha, who her mother is an archaeologist, and they live in this museum for Indian art and culture. So she's just been raised in this museum, and there's a lamp in the museum that she's forbidden to touch. And she has a tendency to lie at school and kind of brag about things that aren't necessarily true. And these kids come to confront her about it and kind of bully her. And so she gets dared to light this lamp that's cursed. And so she does, and bad things happen because a demon comes out of the lamp. And so then she has to go on a quest in order to save the whole world because of what she did. And I love that our main character is flawed, that she, you know, admittedly lies a lot, and we just see her growth throughout the book. And I also just think she's a funny, sarcastic main character. I love her, and I just love all the like folklore mythology that was in this. It was a lot of fun. The only thing that makes this not 5 stars for me was that there's a lot of pulp culture references that bugged me because they're not age appropriate. Like, this is a middle grade novel, and there were there's several Game of Thrones references. There was ones for The Matrix and Friends, things that I'm like, this was before, either too old, like not age appropriate for the kids reading this, or they're like, it's too old. Like Friends and The Matrix were before like middle school kids would even have been alive. So it just kind of bugged me that the pulp culture references were not related to the age group that the book is. Like, I got them as an adult, but this is meant for an 8 to 12-year-old or 8 to 14-year-old. So that kind of bugged me a bit. So 4 stars, but I really love this and had a good time with it, and will continue the series with my daughter. And the last 2 books are my 5 stars. So first I have Bearing the Moon by Andre Pauline. And this is an illustrated novel in verse. So it is written in poetry, but then has like either full page pictures or like half page pictures. And it's beautiful. Like the colors are all these like pinks and purples. And it also has a really important message. It's short. It's definitely one that I would say would be good to share with kids. Like this is one that you would read with your kids to discuss a really important issue. And this takes place in a village in India where this village does not have any toilets or latrines. And so the women in the community are only allowed to relieve themselves in a field at night. So they can't drink, like the main character's talking about how she doesn't drink water during the day because then she would have to go to the bathroom, and then they have to wait till dark to go out to this field because it's shameful and it's not something that they talk about. And then this government official comes one day to the village and like is like, what can we help you with? What can the government help your community with? And she wants to talk about the fact that they need some toilets. But everybody's like, no, we don't talk about that. We don't discuss that. And so our main character is trying to decide if she can be brave enough to discuss with this official, like this big guy from the city, what she feels is necessary for their community. And I think this, just like A Long Walk to Water, is really important for kids to realize that in certain parts of the world, they might not have the same resources that we have in our home. And in the back, there's more information about how many people in the world don't have access to toilets and the problems that come from that in terms of sanitation and all that. So I think that this is a really important book for kids to read. And the last one is the one that I love the most this month, and that was All 13, The Incredible Cave Rescue of the Thai Boys Soccer Team by Christina Soon Torvat. And this was just amazing. I absolutely love this book. This is a nonfiction book that she wrote about this cave rescue, and it's so compelling. You know from the beginning what happened. I mean, I think at least I knew what the outcome was going to be, but I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. Like her writing just pulled me in. It was so compelling. There's lots of pictures of like, you know, the area and the cave and the water situation. Like this is about a group of boys who were trapped in a cave when the water like started flooding in the cave, and so they couldn't get out, and the rescue that happened. And yeah, like I said, it was just like edge of my seat the whole time. I think this is one that can be appreciated by adults too. Obviously, I was buddying this with Krista from Books and Jams and Amy's from Amy's Bookish Life. I'll link her down below. I can't remember if that's her channel name. And all three of us were like 5 stars. We loved it. We were all like, I'm so anxious right now. I had to put this book, I could have read this in one sitting because it was so good, but I had to keep putting it down because I was getting like so anxious for these boys, and also just like the descriptions of the cave and the water and all that. It was so descriptive that I was getting a little too worked up about it. And I just think this was an amazing book. I would highly recommend it to everyone, kids, parents, adults, everyone. Like, so good. I'll definitely be reading this someday with my kids or having my kids read it. I didn't buy a copy, now I wish I had, because I definitely want to share this with them someday, but you know, they're not quite old enough to read this anyways, so we'll wait a while. But I loved it. And that's it. Those are the like 13 books that I read in the first half of this month. I also have like started like a bunch of other books because that's who I am. I just like have a million books going at once. So what about you? Have you participated in Middle Grade March? Have you read some books that you really love so far this month? I'd love to hear from you, and I will see you next time. Bye.